QuickBooks Online 2021 Adjusting Entry Worksheet Creation. Let's get into it with Intuit's QuickBooks Online 2021. Here we are in our Get Great Guitars practice file, setting up our Adjusting Entries worksheet, noting that it's not required to set up an Adjusting Entry worksheet to just enter the adjusting entries directly into QuickBooks as well as the reversing entries, but it is something that helps us to delineate the process between the data input process and the adjusting entry process. It's also something that's commonly done in practice for a similar process for CPA firms when they do adjusting entries at the end of the period. Also, because the adjusting entries are not normal type of entries, they're kind of timing period adjustments and cash is typically not involved within them. They can be a little bit more complex just conceptually, so the adjusting entry worksheet will be a little bit more transparent as we work with the actual accounts and record things to the actual accounts. To do so, we're going to go down to the reports on the left-hand side. We're going to start off with our trial balance report. So we're just going to export a trial balance report and then we'll modify it in Excel. So this will be taking some Excel work here. Note that this is not an Excel course, so I'm going to do that fairly quickly, but we will provide you with the worksheet as well. So if you don't want to build it yourself, you can then work on the worksheet that is provided. But the ability to export information and then adjust it within Excel is a huge tool and something worth getting used to, not only in QuickBooks, but any type of database program. So we're going to type in the trial balance here, the good old TB trial balance, opening it up, range changing up top. We're going to take this from 01/01/21 to 02/28/21. So January through February 28th, going to go ahead and run that report. And then we could do our adjustments to it up top. I could customize the items up top and say maybe we just want to get rid of the headers and footers here. I'm going to get rid of the date, time, and report basis. Those are not necessary. Scrolling back up top, I'll keep the formatting of the numbers just because we're going to change those anyways. And I'm not going to remove the pennies because we might want the pennies when we do the adjusting entries. So I'm going to go ahead and run that report. Now we're going to export it to Excel. This is going to be our starting point. So we're going to go to the old export drop down that we've seen in the past, exporting it to Excel. There it is. It opens up down below. So we're going to be opening up our Excel worksheet. There it is. I'm going to go ahead and save this now as an adjusting entry worksheet. So I'm going to go to the File tab up top. We're going to go to Save As and browsing the folder to see where we want to put this worksheet. So I'm going to put it in our Part 2 folder up top, and I'm going to call it an adjusting entry worksheet. So I'm just going to say it's going to be an adjusting entry worksheet. So I'm going to say, just say ADG entry worksheet, and I'll say 02.28.21, and then say save it. So there we have it. Let's go do some formatting to this now. I'm going to hold Control and scroll up just a bit. So we're now at like the 145% down here. So what we want to do is I'm going to basically try to make a beginning balance column, an adjustment column, and an ending balance column. In order to save space, I would like to be representing the debits and credits in one column and represent debits minus the credits as to show the debit and credit rather than have two separate columns. Because if I work a worksheet with two separate columns, then we're going to have 6 columns instead of 3. So hopefully this will make sense. We do have a whole course on making a worksheet similar to this. We'll go into it with more detail. So I'm going to do this fairly quickly. I'm going to remove the headers up top. I'm going to go from cell 5 up to cell or row 1, selecting the entire row, right-clicking on those rows, delete these items. I want to then make all the formatting of the cells the same. In other words, you can go over here, and if I hit the Home tab, I'm going to pin this down. Then I can see this is at 11. And this one's at 8 and Arial. So I want to make them all the same. So I'm just going to make them all 11 and Calibri by going to the Home tab, Clipboard, Format Painter, and then just paintbrush the entire thing. So now it's all got the same formatting. Then I'm going to right click on the entire thing and format the cells further to what I like on the formatting, which is going to be currency. I'm going to remove the $sign, and negative numbers I'm going to make bracketed and red. And then I'm going to say OK. So there we have it. And now this one doesn't quite fit. So I'm going to make these 2 columns a little wider, just grabbing them and making them a little wider so that that number then fits. That's what those hashtags mean, or those number signs, or whatever you want to call them. And then I want to make all these columns negative because I'd like to pull them over into this column as negative numbers representing credits in our case. So I'm going to select the whole column here, right click on it, and copy it. And then I'm going to test it out, pasting it over here, and I'm going to paste it special. So I'm going to go paste it, but I want to paste it like special, in a special way. And I want to subtract. So I'm going to paste it and subtract, and hopefully that'll put a negative sign in front of all of them. So I'm going to say, let's do that. And there it is. That does exactly what I was hoping. So that looks good. And this total down here, don't need the total. I'm going to remove that. It's a funny formula down there. Delete that altogether. And now I'm going to just remove these two columns. I don't need these columns anymore because I got them over here. I'm just going to delete those. And then I'm going to move these into column B. So I can highlight them and I can grab them on the right hand side of the form and then pull them over. One way to do it. Or the easier way, highlight them, Control X or right click and cut, not paste, but cut. And then paste them over here. That's basically the same thing, those two actions. I'm going to do the same thing here, but this time Control X, which is cut, and Control V and paste. Same thing here. I'm going to take these, Control X cut, Control V paste, and then right here Control X cut, Control V for the paste there. So now we have them all lined up, and if I was to sum them up, I'd say equal the sum of these items. Then it should add up to 0, and that'll give us the idea that the debits equal the credits. So if you're not really familiar with the debits and credits, then you can kind of just see that obviously we have all the accounts that are going to be listed out here. We got the balance sheet on top of the income statement. It's in debit and credit format, which we'll explain a little bit more as we go. But that's going to be our starting point now. Now, these are my beginning balances. Then I'd like my adjusting entries to be right here, and then my ending entries to be over here. So what we'll do then is I'll make a formula in the ending column, which is just simply going to be equals the sum of these two. So I'm just going to sum these up, and this will be my ending column. Any adjustments will be in the middle there, and then this ending column will just pick up those adjustments. So let's copy that down. I'm going to use the autofill, grabbing the fill handle, copy this all the way down, copy this all the way down to there, not including the 0 down here, and then I'm going to copy the 0 across like this. So there we have it. So now we're summing these up. Now this 0, I'm going to call it total debits and credits, and it should be 0. I could use a fancy formula to double check that it's 0 down here. So we'll do a fancy formula, which is in the Home tab, Style, Conditional Formatting, and we want to say that if this thing is greater than, I'm going to start off with greater than, if it's greater than 1, so I want it to be 0 if it's anything other than 0, but I want to have some rounding involved. So if it's greater than 1, if it passes that threshold, we want to make it red. So we're going to make it red. So we'll say, okay. So if this turns out to be 2, then it turns red. And let's do the same thing again. I'm going to say, all right, if any of these do home page formatting, conditional formatting, if anything of these go less than -1, it's also going to turn red. So I'm going to do the same thing. So if this goes to like -2, turns red. Undo. And then if it's good, I'm going to go Home tab, Style, hit the drop down. If it's equal to, then I'm going to say, or let's not say equal to, I'm going to say conditional rules. If it's between, then -1 and 1. We don't want it to be red then, we want it to be green, because that's when we're good. So there it is. So then it's going to be green by default, and then it'll turn red, which will give us that indication that there is a problem down there. And so then here in the headers, I might change the colors and whatnot too, so I'll deal with that. I'm going to add two columns up top. I'm going to select the entire column, 1 and 2, right-click on that column, insert, and I'm going to call this our beginning balance. So this is the beginning balance. I'll just call it that. Let's say trial balance. And this is going to be our adjusting entry, which I usually say entry, adjusting entry. And this is going to be our ending balance, something like that. I'll make these our headers. So I'm going to select these items. I'm going to center them. Home tab, alignment, center. And then let's make them black and white to stand out. So I'm going to go to Home tab font. Let's make this black and white. So that's what I'll do with the headers. I'm going to make the entire thing bolded. So I'm going to select the entire sheet and bold the entire sheet. So there we have that. And then now we have our worksheet here. I'll make these two black and white as well. So it just has that look on it. And so then I'll usually I'm going to select this whole thing. And I'll usually put then our home tab, font, and then borders around all of them. All borders. So we got these squares around them. Just makes them a little bit more stand out-ish. And so there we have this one down here. Maybe we want to make that one black and white to show that it's not an account, right? That's the end of the process down there. And then oftentimes I'll mark the middle of this thing, because you can see we got these accounts are the assets, and then the liabilities, and then we get down to the income accounts, and the equity accounts are right here. So oftentimes I'll highlight the equity accounts right here and say I want to show that this is like the middle, and I'll make them usually blue for me. I usually make them like blue. And that means that everything blue and above is the balance sheet. Everything below the blue is the income statement. So here is the income statement. The funny thing about the income statement in this format is because their credits are negative, the negative numbers are actually income, positive numbers are expenses. But the nice thing about that is you can have a nice, easy formula down below. I don't have to do any adding and subtraction things. I just use the trusty sum formula to calculate net income. Net income then is simply going to be equals the sum function, our most famous function in Excel, is just going to be all these items, all the income statement accounts. So there they are, and that ties out to 10,330. Again, that's a credit because it's a it's negative numbers are the credits, which happen to be the income accounts. So that's actually income, not a loss. Let's double check that over to what we have in QuickBooks. If I go back on over to QuickBooks and I was to open up another income statement, I'm going to duplicate the tab up top. Let's duplicate the tab and open up a good old profit and loss income statement, P&L type report. So let's go to the good old reports down below. We're looking for the P&L, profit and loss income statement, range change up top ending at 022821. Run that report. Scrolling down to the bottom of it, we're at that 10330.1. So is that what we have? 10330.1. So that looks good. Looks like we haven't totally messed anything up yet. So then this middle column, this is where we're going to do stuff. I usually make them a different color so I can see my eye will go here. This is where my entries will go. I'm going to right click on these and I'll make these a different color. Now these colors, I used to not do all these colors and thought they were, accountants don't need colors, right, black and white, but the colors are actually helpful. And then I'm going to go to the more colors wheel down here below. And this, I usually pick this color right here, and there's no real reason you need that color, but it's nice and light so you can see things on top of it. I use it because there's a guy that has a YouTube channel called Excel is Fun that I learned a lot of Excel stuff from, and he used that color. So I use it now. So there's that. So now we're going to then add some items where we're going to enter the adjusting entries. They're going to be to the left. So I need to add like four columns to the left. So how do I add columns to the left? Well, I'm gonna select column A, B, C, and D, let go, right click, and then insert, and that'll push everything out to the left. So now I can add stuff to the left of it. I'm gonna make this one just my buffer column, so I'll make that like a skinny one. And then A, I'm gonna bring that out here, and this is gonna be, I'll call it, say, period end 2/28/21. Adjusting entry worksheet, something like that. And then this is going to be the debit column over here, debit, credit. So I am going to put out the debits and credits on this side, but I'll still represent the credits with negative numbers as we did here. I'm going to make this a little bit larger, and let's make these two centered, home tab alignment, and center them. I'm going to select this whole thing, and then go to Home tab, Font Group. We're going to make this black and white. So there we have that, and this is where our adjusting entries will go. So I'm going to fill stuff out in here. So I'm just going to make this entire thing that light blue again. I'll make this entire thing that light blue. So light blue, and let's put some brackets around it, brackets, and that's where our adjustments will go. So now I'm going to put my adjusting entries here. We will enter the debits and credits here, and then record them on this side in the adjusting column. That'll adjust our beginning balance to our ending balance. So what we have then, what we have is, and if you were working in like an accounting firm or something doing taxes or doing like adjusting entries, you'd probably want to, you might use some kind of software that does this, or do this in Excel, or they might have some other funny looking Excel worksheet. I think this is a good format to use, and I would use Excel more than any other software because it's actually a lot more flexible, and you can use these colors and stuff that really does help, I have found. So then of course what we have is what we got from the client, or what we got in our case from our books are here. Then we'll enter our adjusting entries in the middle, which will give the detail of the adjusting entries on the right, the 2 accounts or more that will be affected, and then we will post them to this middle column. That will then give us the adjustments that will happen in the ending column. These will then be our ending numbers. This ending column then will be our adjusted trial balance. So this, I called it the ending trial balance. Maybe I should call it the adjusted. Just, it would be more proper. Adjusted trial balance at the end. And that's the one that we can then use for financial presentation. This is the one that we're going to present in. Now note once again that if you're a smaller company, you may not need to be presenting externally to like investors or something. You may need to when you need a loan or something like that. But this ending column then might be something you're adjusting to for tax purposes or something like that. So when we do our adjusting entries, we're going to put them in here first. Well, we'll put them in here as we go through them so that we can see them in a more transparent way. Notice how much more transparent this will be, because we can actually see where we started, the adjustments, and then the ending, and then where we end at very quickly and easily. And we can see what the effect will be on net income, all in one little statement. There's no report really in QuickBooks that does that for us. Even the trial balance in QuickBooks doesn't give us the totals down here, and they break out the debits and credits in 2 columns, and we can't see really the beginning and ending balances as easily. So this is a lot more transparent than anything in a database program, because that's not really the use of the database program. The use of the database program is to make the data input as easy as possible and then generate the report. But there's magic happening between the data input and the generation of the report. That magic is transparent in something, a worksheet like this. Now, because we won't have a whole lot of adjusting entries, this middle column can handle the differences, hopefully, and we'll be able to kind of get a good idea of the few entries that we'll be working in and what the effect will be on the financial statements. So we'll do that each time we have an adjusting entry in the worksheet, and then we'll enter it into QuickBooks, and then we'll kind of compare the two as we go. So we're going to save this, and once again, I know that was a lot of Excel, and if you didn't follow that along, we'll provide the Excel worksheet, and you can enter data into the Excel worksheet, or you can ignore the Excel worksheet altogether and do this do just the QuickBooks side of things. You don't need to do it in Excel if you'd rather just do it in QuickBooks. And again, just realize these adjusting entries might be something that if you're a bookkeeper, you might say, hey, I want to rely on and work with a CPA firm or accounting firm or tax professional that does this part of the process, and you want to find a good one that's going to basically do the process for you, that you can recommend your clients to, do the adjusting entries, well, to get the taxes done or get the financials done or whatever needs to be done, and do the reversing entries or whatever needs to be done so that you can still do your process easily, whatever method that you're using, maybe a cash method, more of a cash method type of basis. So you want to be working with someone that understands these, not only the adjusting entries, but also how to go back and forth from doing the tax return back to the books, so that the one doing the books can then go back to what works logistically well for them. And we'll talk about that process as we go through some of the common adjusting and reversing entries.